Okay guys, this video is about how to use the read operation in a file. Now we've covered write, and we're not going to have any videos for append because append and write work in exactly the same way. It's just that the end result will be different. So let's take a look at how read line works, or how to read from a file. Now, before we get into it, I want you to always remember files contain only string data. You cannot extract numbers from a file. A file cannot contain numbers or any other types of data. Okay, so it cannot contain Boolean values or numbers or real numbers, etc. Whatever's on a file is stored as a string. Okay, now when we're reading from a file, the command that we're interested in is a command that's called read file. I think I've got a mistake here. It says read line. It should be read file. Okay, so here we go. There it is. Okay, now similar to before, to the write file, you have to mention the file name, okay, followed by a variable which will store the line of text in the file. Okay, every time this command is executed, it will read a separate line. So if I have this in a for loop and it's happening over and over again, it will essentially, every time it's read, it will go to the next line and the next line and the next line. Okay, so whatever we've just read from our file will be stored in a line. Even if the string of data that we've read is an entire sentence, that entire sentence will be put in this particular variable. Now, the variable name doesn't matter. As long as it's in string data type, we are okay and ready to go. Now, one thing to consider. When reading from files, a common problem is that we do not know how many lines of text or data exist in the file. In order to overcome this issue, there is a function called EOF, which stands for end of file. And we can use this function in order to cycle through every single line of the file until we reach the end. And the way we would do it is we would use a while loop, and we would write literally this statement here. This says while not end of file, essentially meaning while you haven't reached to the end of file, keep on doing whatever you want to do. In our situation, read the file. Okay. In the odd situation that you will know exactly how many times or exactly how many lines there are in a file, you do not need to use this particular function with a while loop. Okay, so here's an example. This example says, output all the grades of the file grades.txt to the screen. Okay. Now, essentially, the biggest problem right here is that we don't know how many grades exist in the grades.txt file. Okay, so in this situation, it means that we have to continually read the file until we reach the end, meaning that our strategy involves using the while not EOF. Okay, so here's the solution. First of all, we need to declare the variable that's going to be storing everything that we're going to be reading, every line that we're going to be reading from the file. And remember, it has to be of data type string. As before we actually touch the file, we need to open it, okay? And we need to mention for what reason we are opening it, okay? And here's the while not end of file function. This while loop will use the EOF function to loop until we reach the end of the file, essentially reaching until the last line. For example, let's say that this is my file and I have these grades inside. Okay, this end of file loop will work for this line, this line, this line, this line, this line, and this one. And when we reach 93, when this comes into play, it will try and look for the next line. The next line is empty or it doesn't contain anything, so it will know that we've reached the end of the file. Okay? So how does this work? Well, while not end of file, well, it's not the end of file because there's something here. Okay? We're going to use the read file. Again, there's a little mistake here. The read file command. We need to mention what the name of the file is. Okay? And then we need to tell it where to store this value. Okay? By the way, all of these values, remember, they are string, so they will be something along the lines of this. Okay? All of them are string. Since we're just outputting these values, we don't care if they're string. Okay? So once we've read the line and we've stored 77 in line to read, then we can just output whatever is inside line to read. Okay? And this will loop over and over and over again until we finally read 93, and then it will know that we've reached the end of the file. Right, and once we're done with that, we mustn't forget to close the file. Okay? Now, I've got a tiny little mistake that I need to mention here. When we type in while.eof, we need to mention which file we are checking. So this would be grades.txt. Okay? Just like that. And that's how you read a file that you don't know how many entries are inside it. Awesome. I hope you enjoyed this one. I'll catch you in the next one.